Fatal Fungus Spreading Globally is the title of this video that nobody is gonna watch. So be sure to stay tuned to the very end to find out what you need to know about the latest developing story regarding yet another rampant virus on the loose.
A zombie fungus that inspired the hit video game and TV show The Last of Us has come to life and has claimed a victim in Peru. You might be safe if you're a human, but sadly, for one tarantula, wasn't safe from the cordyceps fungus.
Now, he was infected by this fungus, and it took over his nervous system and forced him to come to this location. And then as he died, the fungus sprouted out of his body, allowing the spores to spread to another unsuspecting tarantula.
For now, it's only tarantulas.
6 years ago, an alert from Wuhan quietly flashed across the world. Few grasped it then, but it would soon change how humanity fears invisible enemies. Now another silent threat is spreading slower, quieter, but stubbornly hard to kill.
Seems like yesterday, or to some a lifetime ago, but 6 years ago, an alert from Wuhan in China quietly flashed across the world. Few grasped it then, but it would soon change how humanity fears invisible enemies. Now another silent threat is spreading slower, quieter, but stubbornly hard to kill. Take a look.
So what's up, folks? Thank you for tuning in to this latest installment of Unwatchable content, where once again we are exploring yet another developing story regarding yet another deadly disease that is beginning to become problematic in multiple states across the US of A. And it was around about a month ago that I first uploaded a video titled Rash Attack British Bum Fungus, in which I found a funny but not funny story regarding a fungus that was on the rise in the United Kingdom that was in particularly attacking the private parts of males and females who had been coming in with close contact with each other. Now recently also I uploaded a video regarding the spread of norovirus, and in that video about a week ago at time of recording, since this production was put into action, I mentioned that the fungus story had not yet developed, but the fungus story said, hold my beer, RD, give me a few days and let me get back to you and I'll bring you some startling figures. Now the numbers that we are hearing from this developing fungus outbreak, that is Candida auroris is the scientific biological name for this fungus that is spreading right rapidly, has only caused about 7,000 cases so far in the United States, compared to the population of the USA itself. That is really a minuscule drop in the ocean. But the other downside to this deadly disease, this fungus that is on the rise, not just in the United States but around the world, it's untreatable, and 1 in 3 people that do contract it, by all accounts, don't make it. Again, make of it what you will, guys. This video is purely for information and conversational purposes, and by no means should this video be taken as medical advice. If you do have any medical conditions that are concerning you, always seek a medical professional. And many of the views and opinions that are shared in some of the articles and videos we are about to see in this video are not necessarily the views and opinions that are shared by Shit Video Productions. But again, guys, it is yet another deadly disease that is on the rise, and some of the videos we are going to see this afternoon, this morning, this evening, whatever time of day it is that you may be happening to watch this video, we're going to hear that they are using the Wuhan story, and they are mentioning that it was 6 years ago to the day, although not necessarily the day that you're watching this video, but the day that I watched the video and downloaded it and compiled it into this evening's production, was the anniversary, by all accounts, of 6 years ago that we first heard of people dropping dead in the streets of Wuhan, and also a little bit like the outbreak of the COVID story, and sort of leading in to the announcement of this becoming, or of COVID-19 becoming a global pandemic. On Netflix, the movie Contagion was trending and was within the top 10 most watched movies on Netflix for quite some time, leading up to and prior to the announcement of the pandemic. And that movie that came out in 2011 was then, very predictive programming of what's to come. But kind of when 2020 come around, Contagion doubled up and served a dual purpose as a propaganda movie, which many people watched the fictional storyline from Contagion, turned it, once it finished, turned over to sort of the news and was hearing a very identical story from the mainstream. And why I mentioned Contagion and COVID, as I said, these are things that we are hearing in this developing story regarding this outbreak of Candida auroris. And to accompany this story is, of course, the Amazon Prime, I believe it's Amazon Prime, popular streaming series The Last of Us, which of course was taken from a video game originally and has become a very, very, very popular franchise for the streaming platform, and has captivated the sort of minds of many people that have tuned in to watch it. So just like COVID had Contagion as its fictional propaganda to accompany that narrative, so too does this fungus narrative have the companionship of The Last of Us to provide external fictional narrative that supports the official narrative that is going around about Candida. So all that being said, folks, let's head over to some of our articles and videos of the day, and of course I will see you upon the flip side. So we are going to start out by taking a journey back in time, although we are not heading that far back in time. We are merely travelling back to March of 2025 from an article from the Los Angeles Times titled "Deadly Drug-Resistant Fungus. CDC Calls Urgent Threat." And it is spreading in hospitals. So, although this story has recently sort of made headlines regarding its rise in the United States, last year the CDC was calling this an urgent threat. And I believe there is a picture of a Petri dish, which contains a strain of Candida auroris, and it is cultured in a Petri dish at the CDC laboratory. Why are they culturing it in a Petri dish at the CDC, one might wonder? I guess it's surely just to observe and examine it, and it wasn't something that was created there and then released by them. Surely not. But this article is by Carla Harter. That's an unfortunate sort of name, Carla Harter. I'm pretty sure some of her school buddies changed the H to an F. But as I said, March 27, 2025 at 3 a.m. Pacific time. This article was originally uploaded to the internet, and a deadly drug-resistant fungus that preys on the sick and the old is continuing to spread in hospitals and senior care facilities across the country, killing more than 1 in 3 infected. That is hyperlinked there. You could click on that possibly on the way back up to get a little bit more information about that. Now, where are we? Candida auroris, a type of yeast that can cause life-threatening illness, was first identified in the United States in 2016. So this sort of predates the COVIDian pandemic, but it was first identified in 2016 with 52 infections reported across the country, according to the CDC. The number of cases has more than doubled annually, hitting 4,514 in 2023. 2023, forgive me. The latest year, the CDC has data available, so they didn't carry out any data throughout 2024 or 2025. It would seem. During this same period, California reported 1,566 infections, more than any other state. The CDC issued a public safety announcement declaring that C. auris, Candida auris, an urgent threat. And this was back in 2023. Because it is resistant to many antifungal drugs, it spreads rapidly in healthcare facilities and can cause severe infections with high death rates. Now, why this is of concern, guys, is because it spreads rapidly in healthcare facilities. Healthcare facilities across the United States and across the globe are currently being inundated and swamped with various patients arriving with subclade K, the superflu mutant variant that is running havoc with healthcare facilities around the world. So already we have overly filled emergency rooms and hospitalizations as a result of influenza. And those people suffering from influenza may now be subjected to this Candida auris, which spreads rapidly in healthcare facilities. What are the odds of that? And as we've established from this article, it can cause severe infections with high death rates. There is an article from March 21st. It was actually earlier than the one we are reading. Potential deadly fungus spreading rapidly across California, but they've mentioned that in this article. But the rapid rise in geographic spread of cases is concerning. And emphasis is needed for continued surveillance, expanded lab capacity, quicker diagnostic tests, and adherence to proven infection prevention and control, says CDC epidemiologist Dr. Megan Lynham, and she said in a statement. Now, there are signs that the fungus is once again on the move. The Georgia Department of Public Health recently reported, again, remember this is from March of 2025, reported a surge in cases, and surges in cases are something we're hearing not only with subclade K, with norovirus, with the measles, and now with this fatal fungus, Candida auris, in healthcare facilities. So, as I said, guys, we have healthcare facilities that are becoming increasingly overcrowded and filled. More and more people are being hospitalized from influenza, and now they are in an environment where this surge in fungus is spreading rapidly. And again, this sort of fungus is something that does, if you are compromised and immune or immunely compromised, I think is the term they use, if you are already suffering from a previous illnesses and then you contract this Candida auris, by all accounts and that is a deadly combination. But C. auris spreads through the direct contact with colonized or infected individuals, contaminated services, and medical equipment. So again, colonized or infected individuals. People are colonized into hospitals to receive treatment. A colonized person has a fungus on their skin. So a colonized person also is a dreaded spreader. So you can have a colony of this fungus within you, and by all accounts you can know nothing about it until it's almost too late. But a colonized person has the fungus on their skin but does not experience symptoms in an affected person. The fungus invades the body, causes symptoms such as fever, chills, sepsis, and organ failure. And in women, it can also cause problems to your coochie. I don't want to, as go too deep into that, but not a very pleasant thing at all. Yeast-infected couches are not pleasant and do carry a certain odour. You know what I'm talking about, guys. But the risk of infection is especially high for patients with catheters, breathing tubes or feeding tubes. And again, many of these people that possibly are suffering with influenza might need some kind of breathing assistance, perhaps, because they create direct entry points for C. auris to enter the bloodstream or lungs. Most healthy people are not at serious risks of complications from infections. As I said, these overcrowded hospitals at the moment are full of people that are far from healthy, and they are suffering from a variant mutant influenza strain that is causing more severe symptoms than regular. So, you know, it's all sort of mounting on top of each other like one kind of deadly cocktail of diseases and viruses that are sort of all intertwined, will possibly kill quite a lot of people. And with this Candida auroris, with a 1 in 3 death rate for people that can attract it, that's quite alarming. Although, you know, at the moment these figures are very, very low, we are hearing that it spreads rapidly, and we have the perfect conditions around the world for this to spread. But to prevent the spread of the disease, most California hospitals have implemented screening procedures from patients transferred from high-risk healthcare settings. These found to have had C. auroris and are then isolated from the rest of the hospital. Segregation, isolation, self-quarantine, these things are beginning to sound a little bit familiar to you, and that's because we have heard them previously around about 6 years ago, and more recently we're hearing these things going along hand in hand with viruses and outbreaks such as subclade K and the norovirus. But the goal is first and foremost to keep the people in your hospital safe, Cohen said. When somebody comes in for a procedure, they're not expecting to go home with a life-threatening illness or having spent time in an ICU from a hospital infection. Most common disinfectants, unfortunately, do not kill Candida auris, which can live on surfaces for weeks. There are, however, specialized products that hospitals can use to eliminate the yeast. And that concludes that article from the LA Times back in March of last year. So we are going to read one more article from last year before we fast forward into contemporary times for the latest news being reported about this deadly drug-resistant fungus. This article was published May 6, 2025, so a little bit more recently than the one we just read, but this one comes from thepeople.com. Fatal fungus, similar to The Last of Us. Disease could spread worldwide. Again, this was from last May, and here we are, sort of 6-7 months later. We're hearing that this is in fact spreading worldwide, but warmer temperatures caused by climate change are increasing the environment where fungus, which can cause lung infections in humans, thrive. And this was by Cara Lynn Schultz. And as I said, May the 6th, 2025 at 3:39 p.m. I'm not sure if there's any significance in those numbers, and it also happens to have 39 comments, 3s and 9s. There is a stock image of a computer-generated Aspergillus illustration. Scary, scary stuff. Looks a little bit like magic mushrooms, which of course mushrooms are fungi, as this Candida auroris is. But rising global temperatures may increase the environments where the fungus Aspergillus thrives. New research says some types of Aspergillus funguses are resistant to existing treatment and can cause a lung disease called aspergillosis. There we are. Research lead Dr. Norman Van Rijn referenced the hit show The Last of Us, which I have not seen. Let me know if you have seen it. If you are watching, drop drop a comment in the live chat or in the section below if you are watching this subsequently and not as the live premiere. But this Last of Us is all about a fungal infection causing an apocalypse, saying reality is already scary enough. But a type of fungus that can grow astonishingly quickly can be fatal to humans is expected to spread as global warming increases habitats where fungus thrives. Aspergillus species cause severe infections in humans, livestock and plants, according to a preprint from the University of Manchester, home to the largest centre for research into fungi. But they're fungi to hang around with, ha ha ha, ba-boom, ching, and respiratory illnesses. There is a stock image of mushrooms releasing spores into the air. What was that related? My landlord said he marks on my ceiling vent where candle smoke was made. Okay, nothing interesting there. But fungal pathogens pose a serious threat to human health by causing infections and disrupting food systems. Viv Goossens, research manager at Wellcome Trust, which funded the research, told Sky News that climate change will make these risks worse. To address these challenges, we must fill in the important research gaps. The problem, the research says, is that global warming is encouraging the growth of the fungus. Analysis of the research in the Financial Times explains that Aspergillus flavus, which impacts crops, could spread up to 16% by 2100. Another type of fungus, Aspergillus fumigatus, which causes infection in those with asthma and other disorders, could cover 77% more ground by 2100. Aspergillus fumigatus causes aspergillosis, the U.S. Center for Disease Control says, which names it the leading cause of invasive mold infections in peoples. It is also treatment resistant, and the CDC explains people affected with Aspergillus fumigatus are 33% more likely to die. That number again, 33% more likely to die. Rising global temperatures fuel the fungus, which grows astonishingly quickly in heat, says Exeter University's Elaine Bignell, who is a co-director at MRC Centre for Medical Macrology. And I believe, no, we're not. We're talking about hundreds of thousands of lives and the continental shifts in species distribution, says Dr. Norman, who is the lead author of the study and a research fellow at the University of Manchester, told the Financial Times, in 50 years, where things grow and what you get infected by is going to be completely different. And never miss a story there, but the story does continue. These articles are very annoying to read at times. They make you think as though they finished, but they continue after an extremely large ad. But back to this article. The threat of fungus taking over the world was famously documented in the video game turned max hit, The Last of Us. Breathing in the spores causes aspergillosis, a potentially fatal lung disease marked by headache, fatigue, coughing up blood, and in some cases can spread throughout the body. As Van Ryn told Sky News, reality is always scary enough. And I do believe that is the end of that article. So there we have some articles from last year, sort of forewarning and suggesting that there is a severe threat to humanity, and this fungus, these fatal funguses can lead to death. Forewarning, foreshadowing, and here we are, the start of 2026, and we're hearing that these funguses are beginning to run a little bit rampant. Actually, we did hear from just at the end of November, in fact, that there was a fungus on the rise in the United Kingdom. Rush attack, British bum fungus was the first video we mentioned. This cause for concern, and here we are a few weeks later. wider, and it is becoming more of a cause for concern. So as we've heard about The Last of Us, why don't we check out a video clip from that series before we dive into some more recent articles and newsreels.
A zombie fungus that inspired the hit video game and TV show The Last of Us has come to life and has claimed a victim in Peru. You might be safe if you're a human, but sadly, for one tarantula, wasn't safe from the cordyceps fungus.
Now, he was infected by this fungus, and it took over his nervous system and forced him to come to this location. And then as he died, the fungus sprouted out of his body, allowing the spores to spread to another unsuspecting tarantula.
For now, it's only tarantulas. It's somewhat fascinating, but it's kind of nightmare fuel. Chris Catola, that's the researcher you just saw. He found the dead and infected tarantula in the jungle in Peru. As horrifying as the imagery is, he says seeing the fungus in action was a rare treat. However, isn't that scene right there how the movie starts? The researcher's looking at the fungus and it jumps on him and gets him in the humans, and then it goes to everybody else?
I don't remember. I just want to stay as far away from it as possible.
And that's your biggest worry?
Yes, any kind of virus, but most probably something similar to influenza.
Because of air travel?
Through the air. Coughing.
I'm sorry, I meant people on planes. That was something you described in your book.
Yes, a new virus in Madagascar, say, could be in Chicago within a matter of weeks, and we end up with a global pandemic. Pan meaning all, the whole world becomes sick all at once.
And Dr. Newman, you're also an epidemiologist. I presume the prospect of a viral pandemic keeps you up at night as well?
No.
No?
No.
All right, well, that's our show.
No, mankind has been at war with the virus from the start. Sometimes millions of people die, as in an actual war, but in the end, we always win.
But you, just to be clear, you do think microorganisms pose a threat?
Oh, in the most dire terms.
Bacteria?
No.
You like saying no?
Yes.
Not bacteria, not viruses, so...
Fungus. Yes, that's the usual response. Fungi seem harmless enough. Many species know otherwise, because there are some fungi who seek not to kill, but to control. Let me ask you, where do we get LSD from?
Where do you get it from?
It comes from ergot, a fungus. Psilocybin, also a fungus. Viruses can make us ill, but fungi can alter our very minds. There's a fungus that infects insects, gets inside an ant, for example, travels through its circulatory system to the ant's brain, and then floods it with hallucinogens, thus bending the ant's mind to its will. Fungus starts to direct the ant's behavior, telling it where to go, what to do, like a puppeteer with a marionette. And it gets worse. The fungus needs food to live, so it begins to devour its host from within, replacing the ant's flesh with its own. But it doesn't let its victim die, no. It keeps its puppet alive by preventing decomposition. How? Where do we get penicillin from?
Fungus. Dr. Schoenheis, you're in distress.
Fungal infection of this kind is real, but not in humans.
True, fungi cannot survive if its host's internal temperature is over 94 degrees. And currently, there are no reasons for fungi to evolve to be able to withstand higher temperatures. But what if that were to change? What if, for instance, the world were to get slightly warmer? Well, now, there is reason to evolve. One gene mutates, and an Ascomycetia, Candida, ergot, Cordyceps, Aspergillus, any one of them could become capable of burrowing into our brains and taking control, not of millions of us, but billions of us. Billions of puppets with poisoned minds, permanently fixed on one unifying goal: to spread the infection to every last human alive by any means necessary. And there are no treatments for this, no preventatives, no cures. They don't exist. It's not even possible to make them.
So if that happens,
we lose.
we'll be back.
Thank you. The CDC is sounding the alarm, meanwhile, over a deadly fungus with super spores that have evolved to survive the human body's attempts to kill it, and it's showing up in hospitals nationwide. That's terrifying. Dr. Mark Siegel is here, NYU Langone medical professor and a Fox News contributor. What do we need to know about this, doctor?
Nice to see you, Sandra. It's called Candida auris, and it's been around for years, but the problem is it's growing and spreading. And over the last 3 years, over the course of the pandemic, it's tripled to expected 2,500 cases in 2022. Here's the problem. It's increasing drug resistance. As you just said, it spreads in hospitals and nursing homes. Not going to bother you if you're healthy, but if you're immunocompromised or you're in that hospital for a chronic illness or an acute illness, it can get you pretty sick. And if it gets you sick, it's got a 30 to 60% death rate, which is what's really concerning. And again, growing drug resistance has what's put the CDC on guard here and on alarm. And we have new antifungal treatments happening, Sandra, but they're only in the pipeline. Now, I want to say one thing reassuring. It does not do well with warm-blooded creatures like humans. Fungi do extremely well with cold-blooded creatures. That's why you see that ant disease, the zombie ant fungi spreading, and they talked about that in The Last of Us on HBO Max. Huge response to that, but that is not going to get humans unless it mutates. This will be controlled by our immune system, by us being warm-blooded, because again, fungi like cold-blooded, and by emerging treatments. However, mutations worry me, and also what is being done in the lab worries me.
So I know a few people who might qualify as cold-blooded individuals, Doc, but you say that this has got a 30 to 60% death rate if you get it. If you get it, how do you treat it if it's that drug resistant?
Well, that's a really good point, John, and it's immunocompromised that I'm worried about. There's a drug called echinocandins that work most of the time. That's our stalwart. That's our guide. That's the best treatment, but that's showing drug resistance in now 5 to 15% of cases. That's the one I have my eye on, but it's multiple resistance. We got a lot of antifungal drugs, but this one is a growing resistance. This is why CDC is setting off the alarm. One more thing. CDC also concerned about the fact that it's misdiagnosed all the time. We're not used to fungi spreading. We're not used to yeast spreading. And there's yeast a lot of places, but this has to be looked at very carefully. And we're missing a lot of these diagnoses in hospitals because, again, the hospitals geared up towards a super attention to COVID and missed a lot of these other emerging infections.
All right. Dr. Mark Siegel on that for us. Thank you very much.
So we just watched a recent newsreel from Fox News, and we're about to listen to an article from Fox News that was uploaded or published on January the 3rd, 2026 at 6:23 p.m. Eastern Time. And the reason we're going to listen to this one, because I've actually tried and attempted several times to read it, but you can see at the top there are some recommended videos, and Fox is really recommending those videos because no matter what you do, you cannot get rid of them. And as much as you try to scroll down the screen, the recommended videos will follow you. But it does read the article itself. Deadly superbug is spreading across the United States, and as drug resistance grows, researchers are warning. It was first identified in January in Japan in 2009, and the fungus is reportedly reached at least 60 countries in dozens of US states. By Deirdre Bardolph. Fox News, published January the 3rd, 2026, 6:23 p.m. Eastern Standard Times. I'm sure there must be some significance in those numbers, as it's all 2s and 3s and 6s across the board. But as I said, we can listen to this one, and there is that video we just watched. And as you will probably realize as we are listening to this, how difficult it is that to read with the constant intrusion of those recommended videos popping up. Don't know what you're thinking, Fox. Let people read the article before you start ramming the recommended videos down their throats. But let's listen to this, and hopefully I can scroll along in consistency with the AI commentator.
Across U.S. as drug resistance grows, researchers warn. A deadly drug-resistant fungus already spreading rapidly through U.S. hospitals is becoming even more threatening worldwide, though there may be hope for new treatments, according to a new scientific review. Candida auris, C. auris, often described as a superbug fungus, is spreading globally and increasingly resisting human immune systems, Hackensack Meridian Center for Discovery and Innovation, CDI, researchers said in a review published in early December. The findings reinforce prior CDC warnings, which have labeled C. auris an urgent antimicrobial threat, the first fungal pathogen to receive that designation, as U.S. cases have surged, particularly in hospitals and long-term care facilities. Approximately 7,000 cases were identified across dozens of U.S. states in 2025, according to the CDC, and it has reportedly been identified in at least 60 countries. The review, which was published in Microbiology and Molecular Biology Reviews, helps explain why the pathogen is so difficult to contain, and warns that outdated diagnostics and limited treatments lag behind. It was conducted by Dr. Neeraj Chauhan of the Hackensack Meridian CDI in New Jersey, Dr. Anuradha Chaudhry of the University of Delhi's Medical Mycology Unit, and Dr. Mikhail Lyanakis, Chief of the Clinical Mycology Program at the National Institutes of Health. Their findings stress the need to develop novel antifungal agents with broad-spectrum activity against human fungal pathogens to improve diagnostic tests and to develop immune and vaccine-based adjunct modalities for the treatment of high-risk patients, the researchers said in a statement. In addition, future efforts should focus on raising awareness about fungal disease through developing better surveillance mechanisms, especially in resource-poor countries, they added. All these developments should help improve the outcomes and prognosis of patients afflicted by opportunistic fungal infections. First identified in 2009 from a patient's ear sample in Japan, C. auris has since spread to dozens of countries, including the U.S., where outbreaks have forced some hospital intensive care units to shut down, according to the researchers. The fungus poses the greatest risk to people who are already critically ill, particularly those on ventilators or with weakened immune systems. Once infected, about half of patients may die, according to some estimates. Unlike many other fungi, C. auris can survive on human skin and cling to hospital surfaces and medical equipment, allowing it to spread easily in healthcare settings. It is resistant to multiple antifungal drugs, and it tends to spread in hospital settings, including on equipment being used on immunocompromised and semi-immunocompromised patients, such as ventilators and catheters, Dr. Mark Siegel, Fox News senior medical analyst and clinical professor of medicine at NYU Langone, previously told Fox News Digital. It is also frequently misdiagnosed, delaying treatment and infection control measures. Unfortunately, symptoms such as fever, chills, and aches may be ubiquitous, and it can be mistaken for other infections, Siegel said. In September, he said intense research was ongoing to develop new treatments. Only 4 major classes of antifungal drugs are currently available, and C. auris has already shown resistance to many of them. While 3 new antifungal drugs have been approved or are in late-stage trials, researchers warn that drug development has struggled to keep pace with the fungus's evolution. Despite the sobering findings, there is still room for cautious optimism. In separate research published in December, scientists at the University of Exeter in England discovered a potential weakness in C. auris while studying the fungus in a living host model. The team found that during infection, the fungus activates specific genes to scavenge iron, a nutrient it needs to survive, according to their paper, which was published in the Nature Portfolio Journal Communications Biology in December. Because iron is essential for the pathogen, researchers believe drugs that block this process could eventually stop infections or even allow existing medications to be repurposed. We think our research may have revealed an Achilles heel in this lethal pathogen during active infection, Dr. Hugh Gifford, a clinical lecturer at the University of Exeter and co-author of the study, said in a statement. As researchers race to better understand the fungus, officials warn that strict infection control, rapid detection, and continued investment in new treatments remain critical. Health experts emphasize that C. auris is not a threat to healthy people. Fox News Digital has reached out to the CDI researchers and additional experts for comment. Fox News Digital's Angelica Stabil contributed reporting.
So thanks to AI for reading us that article, but before we jump over to another one, there was something that I did want to point out that I have highlighted once we do eventually get there that was of interest to me in this particular article, which I'm glad actually the AI did read, because there was quite a lot of names and words in there that I'm sure I would have struggled to pronounce. I think it's at the very near to the top. Yes, here it is. The findings reinforce prior CDC warnings that have labeled C. auris as an urgent antimicrobial threat, and it is the first fungal pathogen to have received that designation. So this is a world first, folks, and something over the last sort of few years that we've been getting used to hearing in an awful lot of a variety of news reels and reports, is that things have happened for the very first time, or there is things that have never before been seen, and that is the case with this Candida auroris. It is the first of its fungal pathogen of its kind to receive a designation that seems as though it's something that they made up specifically to accompany this threat of this Candida fungus that is running rampant, and according to this article kills almost half of the people infected by it, but it has been designated as an urgent antimicrobial threat. So let's go and find a less difficult article to read from the last few days and head over to a few more videos. So this article from CBSnews.com is a little more recent than the previous one. This one came out on January the 6th, 2026 at 6:55 p.m. Dangerous drug-resistant fungus spreads across New York and New Jersey hospitals and nursing homes. And it was New York and New Jersey that were the first states to be declared a high level of threat for influenza subclade K, the mutant variant. And those are both states that have also seen high numbers of hospitalizations. And now, lo and behold, the dangerous drug-resistant fungus is also adding a calamity to a city, or to states rather, that are already facing a calamity from another disease. But a dangerous fungus, the article starts out by saying, as we should know by now, is spreading across hospitals and nursing homes nationwide, including in New York and New Jersey. Candida auroris is a hard to detect and resistant to antifungal medicine. We know that. Again, guys, we are developing and seeing a pattern for a narrative in a lot of these articles that we are seeing, and there's not actually that many really circulating from the last week. We might have a little check before we wrap things up, just how many articles there are on this, and is this going to be a story similar to subclade K, that week for week we are going to see it grow and rise. But where were we? Candida auroris is hard to detect and resistant to antifungal drugs and medicine. It can cause serious infections. According to the CDC, health officials said there were more than 7,000 reported cases across the US in 2025, which is a sharp increase from just a few years. It is being called a superbug, according to the CDC. Most Candida auroris infections can be treated with a class of antifungal medications called echinocandins, but Hackensack Meridian Health published a medical review warning the fungus is becoming more resistant to medicine. So this Hackensack medical review is being used as the catalyst for a lot of these articles to use as a point of reference. But sometimes we get drug-resistant forms. The article continues to say where there are no more antifungal drugs that are available to treat it. And that is why it has been called a superbug, says David Perelin, a chief scientific officer at the Center for Discovery and Innovation at Hackensack Meridian Health. I don't think we heard of him in the previous article, but he said that the potentially deadly infection is spreading mostly in healthcare settings like hospitals and nursing homes. Symptoms and spread of Candida auris. The symptoms of Candida auris, which is a type of yeast, depend on how severe and where the infection is. According to the CDC, they could include fever or chills, but there isn't a single common set of symptoms. It often causes no symptoms for healthy people. Where have we heard no symptoms being part of the symptoms? But can pose a serious threat to patients with severe underlying illnesses, and we've also heard that before once or twice in other previous psychological operations and possibly contemporary coinciding psychological operations. But researchers say outdated diagnostics can often misidentify the infection, which delays treatments because Candida auris can spread easily on surfaces and surroundings. Asymptomatic patients may not realize they have it on their skin or can spread it to objects or people around them. When you have a colonizer, and again, a colonizer is what they are calling somebody who carries this fungus virus that can colonize the skin and can also persist for long periods of time, for example, on bed rails, on catheters, or you have a situation where you have extensive transmission, Perlin said. While researchers are testing new antifungal drugs, experts are strict infection control and early detection are the best defenses. So that was a shorter one from a little more recently than the previous one. So let's go and look at one more before checking out a few more recent videos before we start thinking about wrapping things up for this particular installment of Unwatchable Content. Now we find ourselves at International Business Times UK.co.uk. Trending, deadly fungus spreads silently as asymptomatic carriers drive hospital outbreaks. Drug-resistant fungus Candida auris is spreading in hospitals, often carried by people who show no symptoms. Published the 6th of January 2026 at 3:20 p.m. Greenwich Mean Time, yesterday at time of recording. The drug-resistant fungus is spreading quietly through hospitals and care facilities, raising concerns among public health officials about outbreaks that can be difficult to detect and even harder to control. The pathogen Candida auris has been linked to a growing number of healthcare-associated infections and is regarded as one of the most serious emerging fungal threats worldwide. Unlike many infectious diseases, C. auris often spreads without obvious warning signs. People can carry the fungus on their skin without becoming ill, allowing it to become more undetected through wards and long-term care settings where vulnerable patients are most at risk. Is this a little bit of medical cleansing, create a disease, then spread it through, intensive care units, and hopefully 50% of the patients residing in those intensive care may contract it, and as it has a very high deadly risk contained to it, it's a high death factor as well as trying to say, then maybe that is its purpose of its spread throughout health facilities. But health authorities, the article continues, warn that the combination of silent transmission, resistance to multiple antifungal drugs, and persistence on surface presents a growing challenge for hospitals. While the general public is considered to be at low risk, the rise of outbreaks has prompted in calls for stronger surveillance, there's an SS there, and infection control measures. A stealthy pathogen on the rise. First identified in Japan 2009, and here we are, we see again they are sort of reading from the same script, this time from the UK, borrowing the Candida auris narrative script that is being handed around to some of these news publications that are reporting on this developing story. But it was identified in Japan in 2009, and it was renamed Candizoma auris in the UK. And why would you rename it to something more complicated to say, United Kingdom? Shame on you. But it has been detected in dozens of countries, and in the United States, cases were first reported in 2016 and have increased steadily. Public health data released in recent years showed it thousands of confirmed infections across multiple states, with particular high numbers reported in the parts of the West and in the South. Strangely enough, maybe that is a little bit of Civil War reminiscence, targeting certain states for selective fungus releases. Who knows? Just hypothetically exploring the alternative avenues of possibility. Make of it what you will, folks. But unlike many other funguses, C. auris can survive on skin and hospital surfaces for extended periods. It is also resistant to several commonly used antifungal medications, limiting treatment options when infections occur. These characteristics have led to organizations including the CDC to classify it as an urgent antimicrobial resistance threat. Invisible spread through asymptomatic carriers. A key concern for clinicians is that C. auris often spreads through people who show no symptoms. Carriers can unknowingly introduce the fungus to healthcare environments where it may infect patients with weakened immune system or those using invasive devices such as catheters or ventilators. Because C. auris can withstand some disinfectants and adhere to equipment and bedding, outbreaks can persist despite routine cleaning. Infection control teams often need to implement enhanced screening, isolation protocols, and specialized cleaning methods. Don't know what happened there. The screen just suddenly jumped up and went large on me. Now it's gone small on me. So that is, I believe, the end of the article. No, it isn't. Why the health authorities are concerned. There's a little bit of technical glitch in there, and I do think sometimes these are deliberate and intentional, courtesy of our Google algorithm. But invasive C. auris infections can affect the bloodstream and internal organs and are associated with high mortality rates among hospitalized patients. The risk is greatest for those who are already critically ill, and I will remind you and say once again in this video that there are currently hundreds of thousands of people in the United States alone who are critically ill in hospital, suffering from the latest strain of influenza, the mutated variant subclade K, but rather than for healthy members of the public. And that's what I'm saying. Is this some kind of medical cleansing virus? Is this the purpose it's been distributed for, to sort of clear up a few people that are maybe a little bit costly to health care providers, or national health systems where the sort of the government provide free health cover? Maybe let's try and get rid of a few of these burdenous cost effective patients, get them out of the picture. But the threat is not confined to the United States. European health agencies and also the World Health Organization. So there you go, guys. We've got some global players, cast characters in this particular narrative, have also reported rising cases numbers and warned that antifungal resistance is futile. Sorry, it didn't say that. It says that antifungal resistance is an emerging global problem, just like there was an emerging global problem 6 years ago in the region of Wuhan, China. But in the United Kingdom, the article carries on by saying that the UK Health Security Agency has issued guidance to healthcare providers on identifying and managing cases. I believe there is a video there that you can watch on X, formerly known as Twitter, and that is from the UK Health Security Agency. We know threats of viruses and bacteria, but what about fungi? Fungi can be, again, a little bit of a screen glitch there. Fungi can be part of our normal flora, but once stands out for its resilience. Our blog post explains why we keep a close particular watch on Candidozema auris in particular. And there's some stuff from Fox. Look, there you go. Fox local deadly superbug is spreading across the US. And I think we've already read that one. And again, I'm having sort of difficulties with my screen, which is something we did encounter before in a previous stream. I actually contained that in a little bit of post-credit content for you not to watch. But there you go, guys. There was another recent article, this time from the UK, about this fungus that is rapidly spreading and causing all sorts of concerns for global health organizations. So let's go and watch a couple of videos, break up the articles, and maybe I will see you back in the virtual basement to wrap things up.
One of the biggest problems with the fungus known as Candida auris is that it's multi-drug resistant, which makes infections difficult to treat. Candida auris is a fungus that grows as a yeast. There are several strains of Candida. However, what many medical centers are dealing with right now is a newer form. Dr. Scott Roberts, the Associate Medical Director for Infection Prevention at Yale New Haven Health, says this strain being newer complicates treatment.
A lot of labs don't yet have the mechanisms or capabilities to actually identify it.
Although research and treatment methods are limited, he says the fungus is known to cause outbreaks.
There's been a handful of reports of outbreaks in nursing homes, congregate care settings where a lot of people live in the same setting, and there's a lot of mixing between patients.
The people at highest risk for infection are those with weakened immune systems, people who use invasive medical devices like catheters, or are in long-term care facilities. Someone infected by the fungus may experience symptoms like fevers, low blood pressure, or a high heart rate. Dr. Roberts says proper hygiene is the best way to prevent spreading the fungus.
So hand washing is the biggest thing. So just washing hands with soap and water is going to kill this. And the other thing is disinfecting the environment. So if somebody does have it, you can disinfect it with bleach is what we recommend.
Dr. Roberts wants to make it clear that not everyone who encounters the fungus will become sick or ever show symptoms, but it is certainly something to monitor for high-risk patients. If you believe you're infected, you're encouraged to contact your primary care physician. In New Haven, Alicia Hercules, Fox 61.
A deadly fungus has now spread to Connecticut. State labs confirmed several cases of Candida auris. News 8's Kent Pierce spoke to an infectious disease expert about what you need to know to stay safe.
The latest concern for Connecticut hospitals is a yeast, a kind of fungus called Candida auris. An infectious disease specialist at Yale New Haven Hospital says in other places it has caused outbreaks of serious infection.
When I hear about outbreaks in certain units, I do not think about a fungus. I think about a bacteria spreading amongst patients or a virus. And so this is really one of the first funguses that can cause outbreaks.
Candida auris has been around for years, but the number of cases keeps growing. It's been in New York City for a decade, but now patients have tested positive here in Connecticut. One problem is it's still so new, many labs are not ready to test for it. The good news is most people are not likely to get it.
Most of us get it, we'll not know about it, we won't have any infection, and we'll clear it. Really what we worry about is specific patients at high risk.
Now, not to gross you out, but all of us are constantly covered in lots of bacteria and fungi. It just stays on the outside of our skin and doesn't bother us on the inside. But in hospitals and nursing homes, there are people with invasive medical devices going inside the body, and those are the people most at risk. So the concern is mostly in hospitals, nursing homes, and other long-term care facilities. And the really bad news is most drugs don't work on it.
We have three main classes of antifungal medications, and some strains out there are resistant to all three.
Dr. Roberts says there are still treatments that do work, and as more researchers hear about it, there should be more drugs developed in the future. In New Haven, Kent Pierce, News 8.
Seems like yesterday, or to some a lifetime ago, but 6 years ago, an alert from Wuhan in China quietly flashed across the world. Few grasped it then, but it would soon change how humanity fears invisible enemies. Now another silent threat is spreading slower, quieter, but stubbornly hard to kill. Take a look.
Six years ago today, the world first heard of a mysterious virus emerging from Wuhan. Back then, it sounded distant, contained, almost abstract. Within weeks, it wasn't. COVID-19 rewired global health systems, exposed vulnerabilities, and taught one brutal lesson. Microbes evolve faster than human complacency. Now, scientists are tracking a different kind of adversary, not a virus, a fungus. Its name is Candida auris. It doesn't spread with explosive speed. It doesn't shut down cities, but it refuses to die. Candida auris is being described as a superbug fungus because it resists most known antifungal drugs. In some cases, all of them. Health officials say more than 7,000 people have been infected across 27 U.S. states, largely in hospitals and long-term care facilities. Globally, Candida auris has now been detected in over 60 countries across 6 continents, its burden rising year after year. The most common symptoms are skin and nail fungal infections. A patient may suffer from digestive issues like bloating, constipation, and diarrhea. They also feel tired and worn down along with fever and chills. Some female patients also develop vaginal infections. What worries scientists is its adaptability. Candida auris appears to be learning, mutating, outsmarting drugs. Faster than new treatments can be developed. Climate change, global travel, and crowded hospitals may all be helping it spread.
A dangerous, drug-resistant, and often deadly fungus is spreading across hospitals and nursing homes nationwide and right here in the tri-state area. As Nick Calloway explains, public health officials are worried about rising cases.
A little-known fungus is becoming a growing public health concern. Candida auris is drug-resistant, hard to detect, and spreading fast. According to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, there were more than 7,000 reported cases across the U.S. last year, a sharp increase from just a few years ago. Those cases are now reported in more than half the states in the U.S., including New York and New Jersey.
When you have a colonizer that can colonize the skin and can also persist for long periods of time on, for example, bed rails, on catheters, you have a situation where you have extensive transmission.
Dr. David Perlin is the Chief Scientific Officer at the Center for Discovery and Innovation at Hackensack Meridian Health. He said the deadly infection is spreading mostly in hospitals and nursing homes. Patients with a severe underlying illness are most vulnerable. Hackensack Meridian Health published a medical review last month that warns the fungus is becoming more resistant to antifungal drugs.
And sometimes we get drug-resistant forms where there are no more antifungal drugs that are available to treat it, and that's why it's being called, quote, a superbug.
Researchers say outdated diagnostics often misidentify the infection, which delays treatment. While researchers are testing new antifungal drugs, experts say early detection and strict infection control are the best defenses right now. In Nutley, New Jersey, Nick Calloway, CBS News, New York.
Hello and welcome to Medical Dialogues. I'm Anshika Mishra. Here's what I bring to you from the world of medicine. Indian study reveals drug-resistant fungus becoming more lethal and spreading worldwide. A silent killer fungus is evolving faster than our defenses and it's spreading worldwide. Indian researchers from the Vallabhbhai Patel Chest Institute at University of Delhi, collaborating with the US National Institutes for Health, have uncovered how Candida auris, a multi-drug resistant pathogen, is growing deadlier, colonizing skin like glue and fueling invasive infections that kill over 50% of victims despite treatment. Published in Microbiology and Molecular Biology Reviews, their comprehensive review reveals why this superbug threatens 6.5 million people yearly and demands urgent global action. Candida auris emerged just over a decade ago but now ravages hospitals globally, resisting most antifungal and mimicking harmless yeast on standard tests. Its trick includes shape-shifting from single yeast cell to thread-like filaments for invasion, clumping into protective aggregates, and tweaking gene expression to adapt on the fly. What makes it especially sneaky? Well, cell wall proteins that stick it to human skin, hospital surfaces, and even medical devices, turning patients into unwitting carriers who spread it between wards. The team synthesized global data on its biology, showing how C. auris evades immune attacks by proactive defenses, while diagnostics often misidentify it, delaying life-saving care. Colonized skin becomes a launchpad for bloodstream invasions, with mortality soaring in vulnerable groups like the elderly, diabetics, and immunocompromised. Long-term skin persistence risk hospital-wide outbreaks and systemic disease. Key findings highlight its virulent surge. Filament formation aids tissue penetration, aggregates shield against drug and immune cells, and environmental adaptability fuels persistence. The fungus outsmarts host defense, thriving where others fail. Awareness lags behind its spread. Early detection and hygiene could curb transmission. Now, this wake-up call reveals C. auris as a master evader, but armed with its playbook, science can fight back smarter. In resource-poor settings hits hardest, simple vigilance might save millions from this fungal apocalypse. Thank you for watching. Stay tuned to Medical Dialogues for more updates.
You're watching Mirror 7 News. Stay informed, stay ahead for more news.
There's a growing health threat that most people have never heard of, yet scientists around the world are increasingly worried about it. It's called Candida auris, a deadly and drug-resistant fungus that has been quietly spreading across continents since it was first identified in 2009. What makes this situation unsettling is not just how far it has traveled, but how difficult it has been to detect, treat, and control. Candida auris was initially discovered in a patient's ear in Japan, and at the time, it seemed like a medical curiosity. But over the years, outbreaks have been reported in more than 50 countries, including widespread cases in hospitals and healthcare facilities. The global burden of this fungus has been rising steadily, and it has now become a serious public health concern. One of the biggest dangers lies in how easily C. auris can be mistaken for other, less harmful fungi. Conventional lab tests often misidentify it, which means patients may be given the wrong treatment or treated too late. By the time the correct diagnosis is made, the infection may already have spread through the bloodstream, turning life-threatening very quickly. This fungus is especially dangerous for people with weakened immune systems, such as those in intensive care units or with long-term illnesses. While it can live harmlessly on the skin, it can suddenly invade the body and cause severe infections. Studies suggest that about 1/3 of hospitalized patients with C. auris do not survive, and for bloodstream infections, the death rate can climb close to 50%. What truly sets Candida auris apart is its resistance to antifungal drugs. Many strains are resistant to multiple medications, and in some rare but alarming cases, strains have been found that resist all 4 major classes of antifungal treatments. This has left doctors with very limited options, making infections extremely difficult to control. There is also growing concern that climate change may have played a role in its emergence. Evidence suggests the fungus adapted to warmer temperatures over time, eventually becoming capable of surviving inside the human body. If true, C. auris may be one of the first infectious diseases linked directly to a warming planet. Despite the seriousness of the threat, there is still hope. New antifungal drugs have been approved, or are nearing approval, and promising vaccine research is underway. Scientists are also pushing for better diagnostics, stronger surveillance, and more global awareness, especially in countries with limited healthcare resources. While Candida auris remains relatively rare for now, its steady spread is a warning sign. Researchers are racing to stay ahead of it, hoping to find its weaknesses before this silent fungal menace gains even more ground.
Hello, I'm Dr. David Goodman. Candida auris is not a virus, and it is not the flu. It is a rare but serious fungal infection that can cause severe illness, particularly in people who are already medically vulnerable. Public health experts warn that its rapid spread inside healthcare facilities makes it one of the most urgent infectious threats facing hospitals today. According to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, Candida auris has been detected in dozens of states and continues to increase year after year. What makes this fungus especially concerning is its resistance to multiple antifungal medications, leaving doctors with limited treatment options. Health officials say Candida auris most often affects patients who are hospitalized or living in long-term care facilities. Those at highest risk include people with weakened immune systems, patients using ventilators or catheters, individuals with long hospital stays, and residents of nursing homes. This organism is particularly dangerous because it spreads easily in healthcare settings and is very difficult to eliminate once it gets established. Infectious disease specialists warn. It can live on surfaces for weeks and survive many of the disinfectants hospitals normally rely on. Unlike many infections, Candida auris can be carried on a person's skin without causing symptoms. That means someone may unknowingly spread the fungus to others, especially through shared medical equipment, bed rails, door handles, and healthcare worker contact. In more serious cases, Candida auris can enter the bloodstream, leading to bloodstream infections, organ failure, sepsis, and in some cases, death. Health data shows that mortality rates can be significant, particularly among older adults and those with underlying medical conditions. Public health officials say the fungus is especially difficult to detect. Traditional lab tests often misidentify Candida auris as a different, less dangerous yeast. Because of this, outbreaks may go unnoticed until multiple patients become infected. The CDC classifies Candida auris as an urgent antimicrobial resistance threat, placing it in the highest category of concern. Experts say its spread highlights a growing global problem. Fungi and bacteria are evolving faster than new treatments can be developed. For most healthy people, the risk of infection remains low. Health officials stress that Candida auris does not spread easily in everyday community settings and does not pose a major threat to the general public. However, families with loved ones in hospitals or long-term care facilities are encouraged to ask about infection control practices, hand hygiene policies, and cleaning procedures. This is not something to panic about, health officials say, but it is something to take seriously. Candida auris is a reminder that even common healthcare environments can face uncommon threats, and that vigilance, early detection, and strong infection control measures remain critical. Public health authorities say they will continue monitoring the spread of Candida auris closely and urge healthcare providers to remain alert for signs of infection as cases continue to rise across the country. Health officials across the United States are raising alarms over a dangerous and highly drug-resistant fungal infection known as Candida auris, often referred to as a superbug fungus, as cases continue to rise nationwide. Candida auris is not a virus, and it is not the flu. It is a rare but serious fungal infection that can cause severe illness, particularly in people who are already medically vulnerable. Public health experts warn that its rapid spread inside healthcare facilities makes it one of the most urgent infectious threats facing hospitals today.
There is a pathogen spreading through American hospitals right now that most patients have never heard of. It's not a virus, it's not a bacterium, it's a fungus. But this isn't a common yeast infection. This is Candida auris. It lives for a month on hospital bed rails. It resists all known antifungal drugs. It kills up to 60% of the people it invades. And as of December 2025, it has infected over 7,000 people across more than half of the United States, with cases doubling or tripling each year. This is not a future threat. This is a present crisis. But why is this fungus so uniquely dangerous? How did it seemingly appear out of nowhere? And what does its explosive rise tell us about a hidden, accelerating war between human medicine and an evolving fungal kingdom? Welcome to Health Inside Anatomy and Science. Today, we are declaring a biological red alert. We are going under the microscope to dissect Candida auris. We will explore its unique, terrifying biology, uncover the shocking theory linking its emergence to climate change, and reveal the frontline battle happening in our hospitals to contain a pathogen that could redefine modern medicine's limits. Part 1. The anatomy of a perfect pathogen. What makes Candida auris a superbug? Candida auris isn't just resistant, it is evolutionarily optimized for the modern healthcare environment. Let's break down its weaponry. Multi-drug resistance, the untreatable core. Most fungi are susceptible to at least one of the three main antifungal classes. Candida auris frequently carries genetic mutations that make it resistant to all three. Azoles, such as fluconazole, target fungal cell membrane synthesis. Candida auris has efflux pumps that literally pump the drug out of its cells and mutations in the drug's target site. Echinocandins, first-line defense, target the fungal cell wall. Candida auris has developed mutations in the FKS genes, altering the target enzyme so the drugs can't bind effectively. Polyenes, such as amphotericin B, bind to fungal membranes. Resistance is less common but emerging, often through complex membrane alterations. This multi-drug resistance isn't an accident. It's likely the result of widespread agricultural use of fungicides, which created environmental pressure that pre-trained this fungus to survive our medicines. Environmental persistence, the silent contaminant. Most Candida species die quickly on dry surfaces. Candida auris forms robust biofilms, structured, slimy communities of cells on plastics, steel, and fabrics. These biofilms are chemically and physically resistant to standard hospital disinfectants. It can survive for weeks, turning a hospital room into a minefield for the next vulnerable patient. Thermotolerance and the climate change hypothesis, the scariest theory. Human body temperature, 37 degrees Celsius, 98.6 degrees Fahrenheit, has long been a thermal barrier for most environmental fungi. They simply can't grow that hot. Candida auris can. Crucially, it thrives at temperatures up to 42 degrees Celsius, or 107.6 degrees Fahrenheit. The leading scientific theory, published in journals like MBio, posits that global climate warming has allowed fungi in the environment to adapt to higher temperatures. Candida auris may have learned to survive in warmer environments, a trait that then allowed it to breach the human thermal defense for the first time. If true, Candida auris is the first fungal pathogen whose emergence can be directly linked to climate change, a harbinger of more to come. Part 2. The hostile takeover, how Candida auris invades the human body. Candida auris isn't aggressive in healthy people. It's an opportunistic assassin. It targets individuals whose defenses are already breached. The portal of entry. It often enters through invasive medical devices, central lines, catheters into major veins, urinary catheters, surgical wounds, or ventilator tubes. The biofilm it forms on these devices is a direct bridge into the bloodstream or deep tissues. The stealthy symptomology. There is no unique rash or cough. The primary symptom is a persistent fever and chills that do not respond to broad-spectrum antibiotics. This is why it's so deadly. By the time it's correctly identified, often via specialized genomic sequencing in a reference lab, the infection is deeply entrenched. The invasion. Once in the bloodstream, Candida mia, it can seed infections in almost any organ, the heart, endocarditis, bones, brain, and eyes. The mortality rate for invasive Candida auris infections is 30 to 60%, not just from the fungus itself, but from the cascade of organ failure and septic shock it triggers. Part 3. The epidemiology of fear, mapping the 2025 outbreaks. The CDC's urgent threat designation is based on terrifying trend lines. Since its first U.S. case in 2016, reported cases have skyrocketed. In 2025, over 7,000 clinical cases were reported across 27 states, with thousands more found through screening, patients colonized but not yet sick. Screening is critical because colonized patients can unknowingly spread it. Outbreaks are not random. They cluster in long-term acute care hospitals, skilled nursing facilities, and ICUs, places with the highest concentration of vulnerable patients and invasive devices. Recent 2025 studies from neonatal ICUs in Bangladesh highlight a new frontier of terror. The most fragile patients of all, newborns, are now vulnerable. The scariest part? Asymptomatic colonization. A patient can have Candida auris living on their skin or in their gut without being sick. They become a silent reservoir, shedding the fungus onto everything they touch, seeding the environment for months. Part 4. The containment war. The new rules of hospital hygiene. Fighting Candida auris requires a military-grade infection control protocol that goes beyond standard practice. Enhanced environmental cleaning. Rooms require EPA-registered disinfectants effective against Candida auris, often stronger quaternary ammonium compounds or hydrogen peroxide-based foggers. Every surface, walls, curtains, equipment, must be scoured. Contact isolation. Patients colonized or infected are placed in strict isolation. Healthcare workers must don full PPE, gowns, gloves, every time they enter the room and discard it upon leaving. Decolonization? The unanswered question? For bacterial superbugs like MRSA, we can use special washes to decolonize a patient's skin. For Candida auris, there is no proven safe decolonization protocol. Chlorhexidine washes are used, but their full efficacy is unproven. This makes containment infinitely harder. The diagnostic arms race. Hospitals are rapidly upgrading labs to use MALDI-TOF mass spectrometry or PCR tests capable of identifying Candida auris within hours, not the days or weeks of traditional methods. Part 5. The future. New drugs, old drugs, and the fungal apocalypse scenario. The pipeline for new antifungal drugs is perilously thin. Researchers are exploring novel drug classes, drugs with entirely new mechanisms of action, such as inhibiting novel fungal enzymes. Combination therapy, using 2 or 3 antifungals together to overcome resistance, though this increases toxicity. Immunotherapy, boosting the patient's own immune system to fight off the infection. Fosmanogepix, a first-in-class drug targeting a new pathway, GWT1, shows promise in trials against resistant Candida, including auris. The ultimate message is one of stewardship and surveillance. The overuse of antibiotics in medicine and agriculture created this problem. Candida auris is a bill coming due. It is a wake-up call that in the war against microbes, our most formidable enemy may be our own practices, and a changing climate is now tipping the scales in their favor. Candida auris is more than a superbug. It is a biological monument to our failures in antimicrobial stewardship and a chilling preview of a warmer world's microbial landscape. It represents the convergence of 3 crises: drug resistance, climate change, and vulnerable healthcare systems. It cannot be fought with antibiotics or ignored. It demands a fundamental shift in how we clean, diagnose, and think about infection. Its silent spread on bed rails is a louder alarm than any siren. If this investigation into the silent fungal pandemic inside our hospitals alarmed and informed you, please give this video a thumbs up.
So just before we do head back to the virtual basement to commence with the outro pleasantries and to reward those of you eagerly awaiting the dancing girl to play us out, we are just going to take a quick little glance over at Google, and you can see I've just typed in to the search bar deadly fungus. I didn't even put anything about Candida auris, just deadly fungus, and the news section. Here are some of the things we are going to point out. The first one, Discovery magazine, Fatal Fungus turns beetles' chemical shields into a deadly virus. And Fatal Fungus, guys, is of course double FFF, false flag. So let's quickly click on that just to read the headline. Fatal Fungus turns beetles' chemical shields into a deadly weakness. So that isn't actually about the Candida aurora. That is about a fungus in beetles. But can beetles eventually become carriers? Could they maybe transmit their funguses into humans? Similar to the narrative from the series The Rest of Us, but there was one we just read from International Business Times a day ago. The first 2 were from a day ago. A deadly fungus spreads silently, is asymptomatic, blah blah blah, yada yada, whoopie woo, ray tay tay. There's one we read from Fox News. Deadly superbug is spreading across the United States. A week ago, From the Hill, a superbug hits 27 states. Here where the deadly fungus is. Let's click on that one and see if we can have a quick look at the list of places that it is spreading, the states that it is. I'm not going to read it too much because it's pretty much, again, from the same script that we have been hearing in the other articles. So there is a map, I guess. I'm not sure how to decipher that, but there's some light green, darker green, sort of turquoisey and navy blue. The light green is the lowest numbers, the darker the blue. There you go, at the top there's a guide there. But does it list the states? That was what I was hoping that they would do, and no they don't. So that was a bit of a pointless endeavor. But the Independent, look, from a week ago, killer fungus is becoming more infectious. Gizmodo, we've heard from those in a couple of the subclade K videos. Let's just click on there because we have been using those recently as a source of information. A deadly drug-resistant fungus threatens people around the world. Scientists warn the global burden of Candida auris has been increasing since its discovery in 2009. A new review finds, and this is by Ed Cara, published December 30th, 2025. 3-minute read, so come on, we'll get through this. Deadly drug-resistant fungus is extending its tendrils around the world. Research without this month. That the public health threat of Candida auris has steadily climbed over time. Researchers reviewed the scientific literature on C. auris, which was only discovered in 2009. Since then, outbreaks of the fungus have been reported across the globe, including in the United States. The infection is often mistaken for other germs and is hard to treat with existing drugs. The researchers add further rising its danger, so we'll not go too far. We've heard it all before. Scientists find a weak spot in a deadly fungus that shut down. That was 2 weeks ago. Candida auris, that is back in August 21st. Look, Candida auris cases nearly triple as a deadly fungus cases rise. That was from The Hill. And there was one we read from CBS News 17 hours ago at time of recording. So that one came out within the last 24 hours. Let's go and see. Let's go to the AI mode. Sorry. Deadly fungus. In 2026, the term deadly fungus primarily refers to several critical public health threats, most notably Candida auris, a drug-resistant superbug that has been seen a sharp rise in cases. Candida is a yeast-like fungus and is currently labeled as an urgent threat by the CDC due to its resistance to standard antifungal treatments. 2026 status as of early January 2026, reports indicated over 7,000 clinical cases recorded across 27 to 28 US states in 2025. So over half of them, significant spikes have been noted in states like Nevada, New York, Georgia, Alabama, as well as the ones we've already heard of in previous articles and newsreels in this video. Mortality rate estimated between 30 and 60% for invasive infections through victims often have other severe underlying health conditions. Transmission, it spreads easily in healthcare settings like hospitals and nursing homes through contaminated surfaces, medical equipment like catheters, and person-to-person content. So no rumpy pumpy folks. Keep your distance from other people because you never know, they may be asymptomatic colonizers carrying an undetected strain of this fatal fungus Candida aurora on their person, and maybe this is the sign of things to come. Social distancing about to return to streets, supermarkets and shopping malls near you. Symptoms: fever. The AI overview says fever, chills that do not respond to antibiotics, and it can cause a bloodstream wound and ear infections. Recent research: scientists recently discovered a weak spot and it relies on specific genes to scavenge iron to survive. This could lead to new treatments that block this process. Death cap mushrooms, we're not going to read that unless you guys are out looking for magic mushrooms. You're on your own researching what fungus is and mushrooms you can or can't eat. A common mold is this Aspergillus fumigatus, which we have heard about, is a common mold that can become a killer fungus in people with weakened immune systems, asthma or cystic fibrosis. Emerging threat, research from 2025 research that climate change range could expand its range by 77% by 2001. Potentially, no, not 2001, 2100. I don't know how to read that. Hopefully I'll be dead by then. Potentially exposing millions more people in Europe, Asia, and the Americas as it thrives in warming temperatures. So they're telling us, guys, that millions of people are likely to become affected over this as climate continues to change and things get warmer. But of course, we do know that there are technology and devices that are patented, owned by not only the United States government in some of its nefarious organizations, but public sector and private sector organizations that can use it for whatever purposes they choose. Fungi. So let's go down here. How to protect yourself in healthcare. Ensure strict hand hygiene for yourself and visitors. Ask providers about C. aurora screening if you are or a loved one are in long-term care. In the wild, never consume wild mushrooms unless they have been identified by a professional. Use resources like the North American Meteorological Association for safety guidelines. So that was what I just wanted to do, guys. Just give you a little look at some of the articles that are circulating regarding this topic. There are a few. Look, there's one from Connecticut. There's another one. This seems to have changed since we were just here. A couple more there on the top of the list. But without any further ado, guys, let me hand you back to myself in the virtual basement, and we will begin to wrap things up for this latest video that nobody watched. So there you have it, folks. That all but wraps up yet another installment of unwatchable content, and hopefully that those of you who have made it this far into this evening's video, not many people watched, found it interesting as well as informative, but by no means did any of you take this as medical advice, because that was not its intended purpose. If you are feeling sick and have cause for concern, always consult a medical professional and don't rely on videos or self-diagnosis that you find on YouTube. I am not qualified as a medical professional to give anyone medical advice, and not all of the views and opinions shared in this evening's presentation are shared by those at Shit Video Productions, which is pretty much me and my dogs that don't really contribute anything to these videos. Nobody watches other than the occasional little bit of noise pollution. But is the world about to embark upon a zombie apocalypse that was spawned by a fungus? Probably not. It's highly unlikely we are going to see anything very similar to what people are familiar with in that popular streaming series The Last of Us, which I must confess I don't really have an awful lot of knowledge about as to why I didn't include more on The Last of Us in this video presentation, other than fiction does prepare us for our reality, and similar to how Contagion was used to mirror the narrative we were hearing regarding the outbreak of COVID-19, we are seeing in the videos in a few of the articles that we read and saw this evening that The Last of Us is being used to mirror the narrative that we're hearing about the outbreak of this latest deadly disease, Candida auroris, the fatal fungus that has no treatment and has a 60% fatality rate. So again, guys, I don't like to alarm anyone or, predict doom and gloom, but we do have to bear in mind that in contemporary times, at the time of recording, we are under multiple outbreaks of a variety of diseases. The most prominent, of course, is subclade K, that latest influenza mutant strain that has numbers rising and doubling week for week. And that will be the topic of the next installment of unwatchable content, and I will be coming back with a I told you so. So be sure not to watch my next video. That will be an update on Subclade K. But as we have heard in those series of Subclade K videos, as well as mentioning multiple times this evening, don't want to sound like a broken record, but there are an awful lot of people being hospitalized at the moment, and we are also hearing that hospitals are becoming overwhelmed and overrun with the amount of people that are reporting and turning up with symptoms for Subclade K. We've already heard that there have been deaths, including infants, and we have heard tonight all about this fatal fungus, Candida auroris, that it thrives and spreads in hospitals and medical conditions. So the environment is absolutely perfect for this fungus to spread rapidly. And again, another narrative similarity with fungus. This fungus issue is it's asymptomatic. You may not have any symptoms whatsoever, or may not even notice any symptoms or yourself, but you could well be a carrier and pass that on to another person through contact. And that is also similar with the norovirus. It survives on surfaces, and we're hearing with that particular narrative that there are no sort of cleaning products other than bleach that will kill the bacteria involved with spreading norovirus. But with this candida, there's no treatment, there's no cure. It can be on a person for weeks and months by all accounts, and in some cases it can be deadly, especially to people who are already vulnerable and immunely compromised, which is the case of many of the people that are hospitalized around the world suffering from influenza Subclade K, the latest mutant strain. So on that, folks, let's leave it for this evening, and I will all that remains to be say is I will thank each and every one of you who has watched for the duration of this video, as time and your attention are greatest gifts you can give. But if you do want to support this channel beyond giving me your time and attention, you can always buy me a coffee, where two lovely regular offenders, Curious Georgia and Denise D-Nice Winterbottom, have already made a contribution. So thank you to you guys. You rock, and be sure I will be thinking of you when I enjoy my coffee, and if my calculations are correct, I will be dropping the link in the live chat now, but you will be able to find it in the description box if you do choose to do so. And if you do really want to show your support and consideration to me, I always ask, please leave me a contextual content. Let me know what you thought about this video and what you found interested in the comments below. But that is it, folks. Until the next installment of unwatchable content and video no one is gonna watch, make sure to be excellent to each other. May the force be with us all, and until next time, please take care. This is RD signing out for now.
Sit, Ubu, sit. Good dog.
Be excellent to each other. Party on, dudes!
Hey, Luke. May the force be with you.
All right. Take care now. Bye-bye then.